Here's the thing that most of us don't realize. Your brain is quietly running on autopilot and it's relying on these mental shortcuts to get through the day. So these are called cognitive biases. And while they're meant to help us make quick decisions, they can actually do a lot of damage without you even realizing it. So they can shape how you see yourself, how you treat other people, and what you believe is possible. And if you ever stay too long in a job that didn't feel right, or felt like everyone is judging you all the time, or comparing yourself to others' success, and felt like you were falling behind, then you probably felt the impact of these biases without even realizing it. And in this video, I want to show you 5 of the most common ones and how they might be getting in your way. Because once you can see them, you can start making decisions that matter in your life and actually move you forward. And let me know which of these biases you identify with the most. I'll share how these affected me throughout the video. And let's check out the first cognitive bias. And this one I struggle the most in my life. And it's called the spotlight effect. So this is a belief that everyone is paying more attention to you than they actually are. I remember the first time I gave a keynote speech at a big corporate event. There were about 500 senior business leaders in the audience. And I was so nervous as this was my first time speaking in such a high-profile event. So of course, I forgot to unmute my mic for the first 15 seconds. And due to a technical glitch, the slides took a while to get on the screen. In my head, it was just disaster. I imagined the audience whispering to each other, rolling their eyes, wondering why I was even invited. But afterwards, no one mentioned it. Most people approached me and said they loved the talk. One person even said, "Yes, such a strong start." And honestly, I was really shocked. So how did this happen? Because I was in the spotlight, in my own mind. And in one study at Cornell, students were asked to wear an embarrassing t-shirt to class. They thought half the room would notice. But in reality, it was only a fraction of that. The spotlight effect makes us self-conscious. It keeps us quiet in meetings. It stops us from sharing ideas. It prevents us from experimenting, right? Because we're afraid of being seen getting it wrong. It's a really important cognitive bias to recognize in your life because it can hold you back more than you realize. And here's an example. I once worked with a senior manager who hated raising her hand in executive meetings. She was convinced that everyone was criticizing her every word and idea. But it turns out her team saw her as confident and well-spoken. And I definitely did. And honestly, most people are too busy thinking about themselves to think too much about you. And that is incredibly freeing to realize that. So the next time you decide to stop speaking up or do something that scares you, remind yourself you're not under the spotlight. You're underestimating how little people notice. And it's time for you to play a bigger game. Okay, now let's talk about the one that can affect the best of us, the sunk cost fallacy. So this is when we keep investing in something, not because it's still right for us, but because we already put so much time, money, and effort into it. And one of the most common places this shows up is our careers. So maybe you spent years in a particular field. You got the degree, the promotion, the title, but deep down, it's not making you happy anymore. You changed. Your values have shifted, but still, you stay. Because starting over, it feels like throwing away everything you worked so hard for. I've had people say to me, I can't just walk away from 10 years in this industry. But that's the thing. If those 10 years are no longer helping you grow, why let them dictate the next 10? The sunk cost fallacy, it makes us focus on what we already invested instead of what's actually right for us now. So it's like being halfway through a movie that you're not enjoying, but stay in your seat just because you already bought the ticket. And meanwhile, the opportunity to do something better with your time is slipping by. So I'm not saying change is easy, but what's harder is staying stuck for another 5 years, only to wish you made that move sooner. And I've done this myself with improving my own life and business, like holding on to a program or an idea or a client project that I've already outgrown just because I spent so long building it. But every time I held on, it slowed me down. And every time I let go, I made the space for something better. So next time you find yourself thinking, I've come too far to quit, try flipping this question. If I were starting fresh today, would I still choose to go down this path? If not, it might be the time to explore what else is possible. This next bias is really dangerous, especially if you're a smart, driven person who prides yourself on making good decisions. And it's called confirmation bias. And basically, it's when your brain filters in information that supports what you already believe. and then ignores anything that doesn't. I really noticed this when I first started diving into productivity. I was in this season of life where time felt tight and I had a million things going on. And I just wanted to get more done faster. So I started reading books, watching videos, and guess what I gravitated towards? All the content and the ones that told me to hustle harder, work more hours, sleep less. The success came to those who outworked everyone else. And at first, it felt really motivating. But eventually, I burned out. I couldn't concentrate. I felt really drained. And honestly, I wasn't enjoying any of it. So looking back, I wasn't really learning anything new. I was just looking for ideas to validate what I really thought was true. And I can see this happening everywhere. So let's say you might be set on landing a job at a company you really wanted. So you ignore all the red flags during the interview process. Or maybe you invested in the stock and now you're only paying attention to the news that supports your decision. And then you dismiss anything else or news that suggests that you should reconsider. And I think social media, it doesn't help either. It keeps feeding us what we already agree with. So we stay in this bubble where our beliefs just keep getting reinforced. And the only way to grow comes from being willing to have your ideas challenged. Instead of just looking for confirmation, get curious about yourself. Explore other viewpoints. Look for the information that you might be missing. Not because you're wrong, but because you want to see the full picture. And this next bias, it feels harmless until it's not. And it's called self-serving bias. It's that sneaky habit in our brain that has of taking credit when things go right and shifting blame when they don't. So think about something as simple as running late. If someone else is running late to a meeting, we might think, oh, they're so disorganized, or oh, they just don't respect people's time. But if we're late, we'll say, well, the traffic was bad, or sorry that my last meeting ran over, because our reasons always feels justified. And that's a form of self-serving bias. It shows up in much bigger moments too, like failed projects that I've gone through, and realizing that the hardest part was sitting with the discomfort of owning my role and responsibility in the decision and what really happened. And any tough feedback or missed opportunities that's happened in my life that I tend to gravitate towards this bias. Self-serving bias is very subtle. It feels like self-protection, but really it shuts down our ability to learn. And the thing is, the more ambitious you are, the easier it is to fall into it because you're used to solving your problems and succeeding. So when something doesn't go to plan, it's very uncomfortable to look inwards to yourself. And taking responsibility isn't about blaming yourself. It's about giving yourself the power to do something different next time. So next time something fails or didn't go according to plan, don't rush to defend it or defend yourself. Embrace some curiosity and responsibility, and maybe even ask yourself this: what did this teach me that I wouldn't have learned if it had gone perfectly? And I think that's how you grow, not just in your work, but in how you show up and how you live. Speaking of the bias we just talked about, the tendency to shift blame instead of looking inward, that's something I personally work through, and why I want to tell you about BetterHelp, who is the paid partner of this video. Especially growing up in a culture where we didn't really talk about mental health. In my family, struggling was just seen as something you power through. You didn't ask for help. You just carried on. So for a very long time, therapy felt like something other people did, not something I needed. But I've learned that getting support doesn't mean you're weak. It means you're strong enough to want to grow. And BetterHelp is working to stop the stigma around therapy and help more people connect with credentialed therapists, someone who can help you see things more clearly and give you the tools to make lasting change. If you ever felt like you could benefit from talking to someone, just head to betterhelp.com/Laurie Wang or click the link in the description and you get 10% off your first month. This next bias is so common for so many people. Have you ever looked at someone else's success and thought, what am I doing wrong? Maybe you see someone else your age or younger absolutely crushing it, and you want to do exactly what they did to get the same result. It's when we look at these success stories and assume those examples are the full story, and we forget about the countless others who did the same thing but didn't succeed. And this is especially really common in business, content creation, entrepreneurship, and many areas in our own life and work. So in the news, you always hear about the 25-year-old who built a 10 million startup from their garage, or the creator who grew to 1 million subscribers in a year. And our brains go like, well, that's the blueprint. I just need to do what they did. But what we're not seeing is the 10,000 other people who followed the exact same steps and didn't make it. Not because they weren't smart or capable, but because of so many other factors at play, like timing, privilege, or sometimes luck. All the unfair advantages that's part of life beyond just putting in the work. And that plays a big role too. So I actually made this mistake myself many times. I had this belief that I just wasn't moving fast enough. And I would look at people online, other creators and entrepreneurs, and see how quickly they were growing, hitting the new milestones and the constant wins. And then I go into research mode. I really believe that if I just follow their path step by step, I get that same result. But here are the things that I didn't see. The years of building behind the scenes before they ever went public, and the failed businesses before the ones that worked. This bias, it makes us feel like we're falling behind, when really we're just comparing ourselves to the exception, but not the rule. So instead of asking, how can I follow the exact same path and do exactly what they did, you can ask yourself this: what systems are sustainable for me in my season of life and my situation? Because we're all different and our priorities are different. Studying failure is just as valuable, sometimes even more so, than studying the successes. So these are the 5 cognitive biases I want to share with you. These are influencing your choices more than you realize. But the moment you see them and you can identify them, you start to help your mind to shift. Which of these 5 biases do you think shows up the most in your life right now? And if this video helped you see something more clearly, consider liking it, subscribing, and sharing it with someone else who might need to see this too. And you might also enjoy this video about the 5 daily mental habits of successful people. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.